This is the time of the year that the waiver wire can truly win you your fantasy football league. And it's not because some guys are just random revelations that are happening. The guys that we're going through today, specifically at the running back position, these are guys that are taking over their backfield actively right now. And you need to get in on them before it's too late. So we're going through our waiver wire ads for week 6 fantasy football. Make sure to go down there, drop a like on this video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. I was going to get it out on Sunday night. That Sunday night game ended up being way too late. So first up, we're going to go down to our guys that you just need to check the availability on first. This is always how we start these because these guys should not be on waiver wires right now. Darnell Mooney, after a massive game, put up 30-plus points in fantasy football. It was a ridiculous week for Darnell Mooney on Thursday night, obviously. Now, again, this guy is probably not on your waiver wire. He's 69.2% rostered in most leagues here. So Darnell Mooney, the likelihood that he's on your waiver wire is really slim. But again, you need to check Darnell Mooney's availability. Look him up in your league to see if he is rostered right now, because there is not a way that he should ever be on your waiver wire right now. Realistically, you can't expect this type of performance every week from Darnell Mooney. Kirk Cousins threw for 500 plus yards, man. That's not going to be his reality every single week, but Darnell Mooney has been his consistent best option when Kirk Cousins, the play breaks down, and there are scheme plays for Darnell Mooney as well. And then Bucky Irving. Again, I was not happy with his performance on Thursday night. I don't think anybody was, especially if you played Bucky Irving. It was not a good Bucky Irving performance here. But what he ended up doing was still splitting the backfield with Rachaad White. Now, I will put a caveat on this one. I think that fumble late in the game that Bucky Irving had, that was a massive part of why the team lost. In addition to Rachaad White's big run in the first half of that game, I think that probably set Bucky Irving back from taking over this backfield. But I do believe at some point we will start to see more of a Bucky Irving takeover, and he's 57.4% rostered. So there's about a 50-50 shot that he's actually on your waiver wire. But again, just go ahead and look. Chase Brown looks like he may start taking advantage of that backfield a little bit. I'm not saying that Zach Moss is going to become irrelevant all of a sudden, but he did get injured in that game versus the Ravens. Chase Brown did get another touchdown in this game and looked more efficient between himself and Zach Moss. So Chase Brown, the momentum is starting to shift towards Chase Brown a little bit here. And again, 65.5% roster. This guy was like a mid-round pick in fantasy football drafts. So the chances are that a lot of people did not drop him in your league, but Chase Brown is starting to take advantage of this backfield because Zach Moss has been okay, but he has not been as good as Chase Brown, especially the last several weeks where Chase Brown has actually provided that run game a shot of life, which they so desperately needed in Cincinnati. Wan'Dale Robinson also should not be on waivers right now. 63.2% rostered. Wan'Dale Robinson needs to be on a roster right now, especially if you're in a full PPR league. This guy needs to be rostered because in this game, without Malik Neighbors, I actually thought Wan'Dale was going to have a pretty bad game. He ended up getting in the end zone, which kind of saved his week a little bit. But future weeks with Malik Neighbors, the good thing about him the good thing about having Malik Neighbors there for Wan'Dale is that Malik Neighbors is such a legitimate number 1 wide receiver and a downfield threat that he actually opens stuff up towards the line of scrimmage for Wan'Dale to be able to sustain 10 targets per game and get 8 catches out of the 10 targets here. So Wan'Dale Robinson in a full PPR and even in a half PPR format needs to be on a roster for sure. Jakobi Meyers. People need to understand Jakobi Meyers is a must roster guy at this point. There's no reason he should be on waivers. This is Las Vegas's wide receiver 1 now and moving forward. I really do not believe that Devontae Adams will play another snap for the Las Vegas Raiders, which makes Jakobi Meyers the wide receiver 1. And the difference between having a wide receiver 1 in Las Vegas for a team like New England, for example, New England, there's not much upside with a wide receiver 1 there. You could get Demario Douglas off the waiver wire. He's not really going to do much for you. But the difference here is that Jakobi Meyers actually is a really legitimate wide receiver in this league. And whether it's Aiden O'Connell, whether it's Gardner Minshew, he's still being able to provide upside with both. He did it last year with Aiden O'Connell, and he's done it this year so far with Gardner Minshew. So Jakobi Meyers, 65.6% rostered. That needs to be about 100% after this particular week. And then Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett just shouldn't be on waiver wires. It continues to be a Russian roulette situation with him and Jack Smith-Njigba. This past week, Tyler Lockett actually got the majority of the targets between him and Jack Smith-Njigba on Sunday versus the Giants. So Tyler Lockett, just based on that alone, is still involved in the Seattle offense, enough to the point where it's not someone that you want to have on the waiver wire if you're in like a 14-team league or even a 12-team league. So going down to our running backs here, these are the big names right here. Tank Bigsby, Braylon Allen, Ty Chandler, and Tyrone Tracy Jr. So starting out with Tank Bigsby. Tank Bigsby may very well be taking over this backfield. And listen, he has a big game, has some major runs on Sunday versus the Indianapolis Colts, ends up having a really good game in fantasy. Those of us who drafted him in best ball are feeling pretty good right about now. But here's the reality with Tank Bigsby as well. Not only is he under 10% rostered, he's also one of the best handcuff running backs in fantasy football. That alone warrants him to be rostered about 35-40% of the time. Number two, I have read that Travis Etienne is being floated around as a trade candidate before the trade deadline. So let's look at the Jacksonville Jaguars team for a second. They're 1-4, just won their first game in a massive shootout where their defense gave up 30-plus points. Looking at that team and saying to yourself, what would they benefit from more? A running back who's about to come up on a new contract, or Tank Bigsby, who's in his second year of his rookie deal, and they're in a basically almost a full rebuild at this point. Tank Bigsby, I do believe, what they're trying to do right now in Jacksonville, this is all anecdotal, this is my opinion. I believe what they're doing is they're testing him out, and that was exactly the test that they did on Sunday versus the Indianapolis Colts to see if he could be their number one running back moving forward. And he passed that test. So Tank Bigsby, I believe, may very well be a running back one soon in Jacksonville. I think it's very, very possible that we see Tank Bigsby manning this backfield alone, or at least 80% of it. So I do think that with Travis Etienne, he's still going to have good games if Etienne is still a Jag. But I will say this, if Tank Bigsby and Etienne are there, it may be a split at this point. Because Etienne has not looked particularly great in the first several weeks and definitely not as great this Sunday. So I think Tank Bigsby definitely needs to be on rosters at this point. And I'll tell you one other thing I'm really confident in hitting. Patrick Mahomes hitting more than half a yard tonight versus the New Orleans Saints. That's his line on Underdog right now. So if you have not taken advantage of Underdog and you want to get in on this awesome line right here for Patrick Mahomes, go to the comments, grab the link that's there, and use code FFN to sign up for Underdog. Where not only will they give you a 50% deposit match up to $1,000 of bonus cash, but you'll be able to take advantage of the free line. And today's my birthday, and it would mean a lot to me if you went ahead and did this Patrick Mahomes line using code FFN. Braylon Allen at 41.9% rostered, still under 50%. And listen, that Sunday game versus the Vikings went about as I expected. The Vikings ended up winning. Their defense is really, really good. Breece Hall did not take advantage of his opportunity as the way I thought he would. Braylon Allen in this game wasn't more efficient than Breece Hall, but he still is handling a decent amount of work. And Breece Hall is starting to handle about the same amount of work that Braylon Allen is. Do I think that Braylon Allen's taking over the backfield? I don't personally. But I do think it's definitely a little bit scary enough for you to add Braylon Allen to your roster if you have Breece Hall, to prevent this type of situation from happening and losing your first round draft pick. Because if Braylon Allen does eventually take over, he's got plenty of talent. So Braylon Allen at this point, again, one of, if not the best handcuff running backs in fantasy football, along with Tank Bigsby, that definitely should keep him on rosters. But at this point, the threat of Braylon Allen potentially taking over the majority of the running back opportunities, I think that warrants him being at least above 50% roster. Ty Chandler took over the backfield on Sunday, and of course that was because Aaron Jones left the game basically in the second quarter with a hip injury and did not return. Now, from what I've seen today leading up to the reporting, I have seen that, there's optimism about this injury, but it's still largely uncertain. I saw Coach O'Connell say, yeah, we're kind of praying for the best on this one, but it did not sound like he had much conviction on this. So by the time you're watching it, you may have some more clarity on how much time Aaron Jones is going to miss. But Ty Chandler, even though he wasn't the best fantasy back yesterday, did take over the carries for this offense. And the way this offense is, they're so good. They're steamrolling people that I just want fantasy pieces in this offense right here. So Ty Chandler, 35% rostered. At this point with the Aaron Jones injury, needs to be rostered. Because again, even if he doesn't get like, even if he doesn't have super efficient games or he doesn't have like 5 targets per game, if this guy has 12 to 14 to 15 carries per game, this is a guy I'll ultimately want because Minnesota will find ways to get Ty Chandler into the end zone. He did it last year for the team. There's not a reason he can't do it again this year. And then Tyrone Tracy Jr., 18.3% roster. You know, before the season, I actually predicted that Tyrone Tracy might take over the backfield at some point for Devin Singletary. And listen, this is a cheap one because Devin Singletary obviously missed the game because of an injury. So it's not like he was just playing so bad that Tyrone Tracy came in and did what he did. And by the way, what Tyrone Tracy did, over 100 yards on the ground. Tyrone Tracy looked really good against a defense that people thought was vaunted, and I picked as a top 10 defense this week. So Tyrone Tracy Jr. came out and showed really, really well on all of his touches on Sunday. So for this reason alone, with Devin Singletary, who has been okay, not great. This is a Zach Moss in Cincinnati situation where you have a young running back on his rookie deal who looks really, really explosive and just looked overall better than Devin Singletary did. And then you have a guy you just signed in the offseason to be the guy, but he just hasn't done enough yet to really separate himself from a rookie running back. I'm not saying that Tyrone Tracy is taking over this particular week. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that there is definitely enough doubt raised by Tyrone Tracy Jr.'s performance on Sunday to where I think that this is a legitimate conversation within the Giants building, and this is the time of the year that you just need to take shots based on your own conviction here. And then the only other guy I'm going to throw into this list is Michael Wilson of the Arizona Cardinals. 12.3% rostered. It looks as though we now have a clear answer as to who the wide receiver 2 is in Arizona. And I said this before the week. The Arizona Cardinals offense is so hot and cold. There are times where Kyler Murray will be able to sustain 2 good wide receivers in fantasy football. Now, Marvin had a bad game on Sunday in fantasy football. I'm not saying they both dominated here, but Michael Wilson was very involved, as he has been for a couple other games this year. So if you're desperate for a flex play in these next coming weeks with injuries and bye weeks, I don't think you could do bad with Michael Wilson. I think you could do a lot worse than Michael Wilson. So I do think that he should be on rosters this particular week at the very least. So let me know how your team looked in week 5 fantasy football. And make sure to stay tuned later in the day. The buy low candidates before week 6 are coming right at you.